I saw one of the videos that you did. I watched a bunch of them over the last couple of days. And one of the things that I thought was pretty cool was a challenge versus a threat.
Oh,
I thought that was pretty cool. Can you elaborate on that?
so yeah, I like using that one because we're going to face stressors in life. That's inevitable, right? So I break it down as either see it as a challenge or a threat, meaning a challenge is I get to do it. So think like in track, we were just saying I'm a track guy. So see a hurdle, right? The hurdle's coming, like, okay, let me go over it and get ready for the next one. That's a challenge because you know there's a hindrance or know there's something blocking you, but then you know you're going to overcome it. Now, a threat is the opposite. You see the challenge or the obstacle, whatever it is, but now you're retreating and you fall back. So if you see it as a threat, you already put yourself in a position not to win or not to succeed because you're saying, I'm going to succumb to defeat before even trying. While challenge is, I may fail, I may get defeated, but I at least put myself in position to overcome. So it's all about being in the right position, not necessarily I got to win because you can't control outcomes, but you can at least put yourself in position.
Those hurdles are pretty high. What about if
42
someone,
inch, I think.
yeah. What about if someone doesn't have the skill set quite? Maybe they got to look at it from a slightly different angle.
Most definitely. And I talk about this when it comes to confidence a lot because you got to be real with yourself. Like we're just talking about lifting and stuff. You can't think your way and mindset your way to a 500-pound squat. You got to know what is my assessment right now? Is it 225, 250? So if in that regard with mental skills, if I know I'm not as mentally strong or I falter when things get hard, then let me be honest with myself because there's nothing worse than low confidence. The only thing is false confidence because now you're going to put yourself in position not to do it. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, whack your shin on the hurdle and cause yourself to be like, I knew I couldn't do that.
And now you feel worse, and now you program yourself for defeat, and now you're like, I'm not going to try again.
It was really cool, the stuff you were doing out in the gym this morning, hitting up some bench pressing, and then in between, you were standing in front of, I think, kind of like an iPad, right? And then it was giving you like colors, and then you were going based off of the colors. What have you found in training yourself and training other people have been the benefit of this kind of thing?
Well, first and foremost, you got to stay engrossed in the task the whole time. So not saying you don't do that in fitness, but you can kind of like slightly wonder when doing a rep or something and come back, and it won't be too detrimental depending on the weight, of course. But with these tasks, the moment you're not thinking about it, it's gone and you missed it or you did it wrong. So that task had the color, it's called the Stroop effect. And it's named after a guy named John Ridley Stroop. In 1935, he did a study to see if a color spelt in an incorrect ink, so say red written in blue, blue written in green, so forth, if they are able to overcome inhibitions, so typically we just want to go and read the word. If they can stop themselves, they'll have a faster score, meaning they can read a list of words in X amount of time. But those who had trouble with impulse control and inhibition, being able to not just react on the first go, they did worse and messed up or did it slower. So bringing that to a physical standpoint, instead of just saying it, and that's kind of my premise with some of my tasks is, now I'm going to make a goal-directed, I won't say movement, I'll say behavior for a better word, a goal-directed behavior to be the outcome. So now it's not just being a thought. I have to put that process into real time.
Okay, real quick, because the Stroop thing it's going to be really interesting to go into. But back to what you guys were talking to on the challenge versus threat thing. I forgot the name of the Stanford psychologist or whatever, but it was this lady that I was talking about.
Carol Dweck?
It's not Carol Dweck. It's another white woman though. It's another white. Yeah. Although Carol Dweck, what was that book?
Growth Mindset.
Her book. That book was amazing. But there's this other lady that was talking about how there are individuals who perceive stress as being something that can help them grow, something that can be positive. And then there are individuals who perceive stress as a threat or something that moves them back, right? So how do you help athletes reframe that? Because that's a really big deal. If you're going to be an athlete, you're going to be training is going to be stressful. There's going to be aspects of life that's stress training. There's a lot of stressors that are coming your way. And if you can change the way you look at those things, that'll massively help you become a better athlete. But a lot of athletes and people, a lot of stressors fuck with them, right? So how do you help athletes reframe?
So the first thing I would look at is, what are they stressed about? Like a lot of people don't ask that question because we talked about it a little bit when we were lifting. It's like, what am I exactly mad over or frustrated over? Because sometimes it's an underlying issue. Like if you say you went to work, had a bad day, and you come home to your wife and start yelling at her that transference, you're like, oh, I'm projecting this on you, but it's really because my boss gave me a hard time. So sometimes we don't even know what we're stressed about. So the first idea, going back to the athlete, is, am I stressed because I have a high demand of workload physically? Do I have, like with my pro athletes, media stuff to deal with? Because that's a whole other can of worms. And in my student athletes, it's like, okay, I have school, I have to keep a GPA, I got to be a student, I have to have a social life. So am I stressed for what reason? After you identify that, then look in, can it be changed? I think that's something people overlook too. Some things are out of our control. I know it sounds bad to say that because who wants to think that you don't have control? But let's be realistic. There's 8 billion people on this earth. There's all types of natural occurrences. There's financial occurrences, emotional responses. I can only control so much of that. Let's be real. I think there's something about us in modern times, right, that we think we have more control than we really do. So identify what you do have control over. And in psychology, they call it control the controllables, locus of control. So it's nothing I invented, but basically there's something called the circle of control. It's a technique that many mental coaches use. And just imagine a circle. There's a small circle. In that small circle, it's what you directly affect. So I can change what time I get up for work. I can change how hard I work, how I feel about a situation. Now, outside of that circle is what can I influence? Now, I can influence my efforts to get that job opportunity or get that girl to like me on a date, whatever it is, but you can't fully control it because they have a factor. And then outside of the big circle, that's the last part, is what I can't control. I can't control the weather. I can control the coaches, the referees, the other person's choices and emotions towards me. So once you identify what those are, then you can take the steps, then fix it. So those first two factors is what's stressing you and what you can control. And then that point, that's when I say, okay, let's work on the ways to cope and deal with those stressors.
And maybe you can figure out a way to control them, maybe just a little bit.
Yeah.
Such as the referee. Maybe you can address him with respect, when you see him at the warm-up. Maybe you can, acknowledge that he's another person. Hey, how's it going today, sir? They might be on to you that you're looking for them to call the extra fouls and things like that. But it's worth a shot, to be kind to people and to see how much influence you can have. Because someone like Michael Jordan, he would say, I can control he can control every variable, is what he thought in his head. And if he thought that in his head, then maybe some of that was true.
Well, that's I guess you know how to say fake it till you make it. I believe in that to an extent. So like you said, he couldn't control everything, but he at least set the parameters in his mind that he could. And there was a video I watched on YouTube a few months ago. I forget the name of it, but they use this like mindset of like this toxic winning, which I wasn't mad at that. See, I'm kind of different from a lot of the mental coaching people in a sense of I'm not going to give you overly positive stuff. Yes, some of my stuff will give that positive message, but sometimes it won't. Sometimes you got to say, I'm going to win at all costs within means. Like, obviously, you don't want to cheat, lie. You can get into you familiar with the dark triad? You ever heard that term?
I have.
Okay, so we can maybe get into that, but you don't want to be that person. A dark triad, that's a person who will cheat, steal,
Is it
lie.
Machiavellism, narcissism, and
psychopathy.
Psychopathy.
My man, that's good stuff. 'Cause we talk about psychopaths and narcissists. I think that word gets overused. It's like, oh, they think they're good. They're a narcissist. No, like, I'm a competitor. Why shouldn't I think I'm good? And that's why people, like, sometimes on IG, I get feedback. Good, of course, but I get some like, well, you can't just make people think they're better. You got to be humble. I'm like, to an extent, like, I definitely know I'm not the best at everything. So, but let me know what I'm good at. I'm not going to negate that. Like, why would I do that? And all three of us are athletes. So I think that mindset more people should adopt. Like, you should have a certain, they called it, I think it was like toxic winning. I don't want to quote it, but it was like something like that, of to the point that you will do anything within means to get it done. And that's how I carry my business out now, because there's people in similar fields that I'm cool with them, but I'm going to beat you in a healthy way of like, I'm going to provide quality. So people say, I want Nick's stuff.
What about creating a little bit of a persona?
Oh,
Some of the guys can do that, right? Some of the guys are like, I'm this way outside the ring. I'm this way normally. I'm normally calm. I'm docile. But, Tyson was kind of a little bit of both in and out of the ring, right? But he said that he had so many insecurities. He would cry before fights. He was always terrified. But as soon as he stepped inside the ring, as soon as he got inside those ropes, he's like, I'm the killer then.
People can say what they want about Mike, but I like that mindset because I use an analogy with my athletes, even the pro ones all the way down to little kids. I have a 9-year-old gymnast that I was telling you I was in a hotel working with, and I used it with her, and I call it superhero athlete. And I'll ask you, who's your favorite heroes? I see Goku in the back, but
I pick Goku. It would be between Goku and Black Panther. Yes.
Okay, let's go with Black Panther. What about you?
Superman, I don't know.
So those are perfect. The reason I like it better than Goku, because Goku didn't really have too much of an alter ego, but Black Panther can work. And so can Superman. So I'll go with Superman because his is a little easier to analogize. Yeah. So same thing with an athlete, right? You have this persona in the field, in the ring, the court, whatever it is. And those traits that come with that, there's a certain athletic identity. That's what we call it in sports psychology, that you have to be that high competitiveness. You have to do what it takes. Isolate sometimes from your social, circle because you have to win or be the best. So you have to wear that mask. That's Superman. But who's Superman when he's not saving the world? He's Clark Kent. And Clark Kent's personality, people think he's this docile, clumsy kind of nerd, even though he's like 6'3", 220 pounds. But you put on some glasses.
Yeah.
But the glasses throw it all out the window, right? Forget them knowing his real identity. They still think this man's a loser because he's a news reporter with glasses. But anyway,
Still walking around with like a 60-inch chest.
Yeah.
you feel me?
Pecs hanging
all
out
the
the
characters,
And he's dressed well. Yeah.
all the characters
Hair's
that play
perfect.
Superman are jacked or got jacked for the role. Like Chris Reeve wasn't super jacked, but he was like I think 6'5".
Yeah.
Oh,
And then Henry Cavill was like 6'1", 220 solid. So that guy, but get to my point. They have to wear different masks or different identities, and the same thing in sport. I have to be a killer in the ring. I have to be the killer on the court, wherever it is. But I can't carry that because that's one, emotionally draining, because how long can you have that kill, 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 go, go, go mindset before it eats away from you? Like, see it in the movies, like when there's a literal killer and eventually it starts getting to them.
Yeah.
And we can even go on a tangent on that, but get to the point is you have to turn that off at some point. And on the other side, as the Clark Kent, their real identity, that's the athlete who knows when I lost, but it doesn't mean I'm less of a person. Because I've seen people who tied, even when I was an athlete back then, to even my current clients, and they'll tie it into their personality and say, well, if I lost here, I'm a loser there, outside in the real world. And that's the problem. So going back to Mike Tyson, I think it's not perfect, but that's a good way to look at it. Like, you have to shift those lanes. You have to.
Yeah, and Ali obviously did it. But Ali even later on said, like, he didn't believe half the stuff he said. He just was like, he wanted to put it out there to build himself up that way. So he put that energy out there, and now he was accountable for knocking the guy out in the third round, and then there would be a good opening, and he'd knock the guy out in the third round.
And I guess that's the other side of when we talk about false confidence. I guess for the people watching, take this in consideration too. They all could back it up. That's the thing.
They got a skill set.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor comes to mind as well.
Exactly. Right? So you can't just say it too, because I've seen young athletes who try to carry those same Conor McGregor or Floyd Mayweather, whatever it is, personas. But let's be real. Most kids until maybe junior year of high school, for the most part, skill-wise, aren't the best. Maybe raw talent, but I know most people I played with, I'm from South Florida, where when we played football, every game was like a state championship. Even the worst teams were like 4 or 5-star recruits were on those teams. So you couldn't take any days off. So we knew we had to be realistic. You can't be that guy saying, yeah, I'm going to score this many touchdowns or I'm going to win all the games.
I'm going D1. You're like,
Basically.
yeah, right, bro.
You have to be real. Sometimes you're D3. And there's nothing wrong with that, because guess what? If you, going back to my point, identifying where you're at, now I can go forward and say, I'm going to be the best at this level. And if it gets an opportunity to work up, then work up.
You never hear anybody say I'm D3.
Of course. I'm guilty. I said I'm going to UM. I was like, I'm going to the U. I went to camps there. I told you I ran a 4.40. I was the same size height-wise. I was like 190, but I was ideal, but my skill set didn't fully get there. And guess what? I didn't sign with anyone my senior year for football, and I ended up luckily getting a partial track scholarship at a small D1 AA school, Bethune-Cookman University, is a historically black college in Daytona Beach, where it helped me get on this path to the psychology, where I changed my major like 4 times. I was very indecisive, but I took a class of psychology, and I'm like, I think I like this. And that was back in 2008. So there was a guy, Dr. Ian Payton. I haven't talked to him probably since I graduated, but he doesn't know his class shifted me to psych train, and now look what I'm doing. So thank him out there wherever he's at.
What are the athletes that seem to be stuck in a mindset of like loss? Because you mentioned, for example, Ali, he said a lot of things, but he was able to back it up. Even Conor McGregor, before he became the champ, he was talking like he was the champ, right? And you got to imagine, like, if that's your goal, you need to have that in your mind, but you can't talk like that if it's your first fight. But some individuals, maybe they're sparring and they're getting beat right now, or they're just not where they feel that they want to be, but you still need to have a level of confidence and belief, right? How can you build that from ground zero?
So I guess it goes back to my other point, because that first-time fighter, he has literally no experience. Well, at least in the official fight, he might have sparred or practiced, like you said. But he has to know that when I do this, there has to be a level of expectation. So going to your point, he has to expect something, right?
Yeah.
So I say that should be a high level of competitiveness, of being a winner. You don't want to walk in there and saying, man, I'm going to lose because it's my first time. Nah, but you should have an expectation. So going to a point is have a realistic expectation. If you know that because you know where you stand. Let's be real. No matter how good or bad an athlete and how much they lie to themselves, deep down, they know where they stand.
Yeah.
So either the coach or the athlete himself, depending on the age, it's easier to do it. But if you're younger, it's harder, obviously. But they have to say, okay, this guy I'm fighting is, let's say, 5-0, and I'm 1-0. My first fight was against a no-name person.
Yeah.
Can you realistically say that I will go through this effortlessly? You're not going to say I'm going to lose, but you're going to be like, okay, I know how he fights. I've seen his competition, how they fight, and how those fights went. Because I think there's this notion of, oh, I'm my only competition. Yes and no. Obviously, you got to beat yourself first, but like I said earlier, I want to be the best in my field when it comes to this mental coaching and stuff. So I'm always looking at similar people, whether they're in the same lane or not. Like I look at Jordan Peterson stuff all the time. I look at Huberman stuff all the time. Not to say I'm going to beat them, but I'm like, if they're doing this, I need to know where I rank. If their videos are getting this kind of engagement, what am I not saying to get that engagement? So going back to your point, if I'm an athlete getting ready for a fight or whatever sport event, where do I engage, or where's my interaction at? Am I doing the things they're doing? Am I getting the outcomes they're getting? Now, for one fight, you can realistically say probably not, but you can at least keep up with them and then build from there.
What I like from what you mentioned right there is because like we just did a podcast on guys and body image and how like a lot of people are paying attention to social media, and because they're comparing themselves to people all the time, it's like fucking with how they look at themselves mentally. But when it comes to being a competitor, you have to compare, and being an athlete, you have to compare yourself to not just your other competition, but maybe on guys on your team. If you're trying to be the best on your team, you have to see, oh, fuck, he has better dribbling skills than me. He has better athleticism than me. How the fuck can I catch up? You can't be living in your own world where it's me versus me and never comparing yourself to other people. You have to be okay to do that. You have to be okay to see where you stand and see how you can improve.
Exactly. And the thing going off of that is because when they don't see that, they put them in a box like a bubble almost. You know how people who don't get to see the world, or they only live around their only circle of friends, and they get into a real situation, what happens? They fall apart. Yeah, they don't grow, they fall apart. So that's the same thing with that. So you have to be like, okay, like you said, he's a better dribbler. How do I get to his level? Because even if your teammate is still a person that you need to either compare yourself to be better than, so you can help the team, or at least equal to, because at the end of the day, those skills are needed.
I think sometimes a player on a similar team with somebody might be frustrated after practice that somebody else got the praise. Hey, Nsima's rebounding really well today. He did A, B, C. And then someone else thinks that means that the coach took a shot at them, or the coach said something negative about them, but they didn't. They said something positive about him. And rather than the next player thinking about how they're going to beat him, which isn't that bad of an idea too, because it's good to have competitiveness even within your own team, is how can I contribute? Okay, he has those skills. I got other skills. I can pass. I can do this. I can play defense. I'm going to do that as hard as possible for the next couple days and see if I can get, because I would love the coach to say that about me. But a lot of times I think people are like, well, how come the coach didn't say anything about me? But then they don't do anything about it.
So that comes into, hear the term like intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Because motivation is a term that gets thrown out a lot. And there's some people say, oh, it's not about motivation, it's about discipline, or it's, I say it's all of the above, because motivation, I always say, is the gas that makes the car go, but discipline keeps you in the car. Because let's imagine if I got all the gas to go I'm from Florida, so here to California.
Yeah.
But if I don't stay in the car, I get out in Texas or wherever, stop, guess what? I'm not getting to my final destination. So those people who don't have that wherewithal to stay with it, they're not going to be able to accomplish it.
Now, to the Stroop test that we started talking about. Pat Project family, we appreciate you checking out this clip. Check out another one. Just go check out another one. Or comment down below and let us know what you liked about this one. But we love you guys, and we're going to keep bringing you the heat. So comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, okay? Peace.